There's one in particular that I wanted to talk with you about today that I think is very provocative. It definitely got a lot of views on your channel for good reason. And this was an experiment that you decided to do where you were going to go for an extended period of time eating nothing but burger patty, or burger patties from McDonald's. That is
Yeah.
an amazing experience. Can you tell us a little bit about why you decided to try that? Or what you were trying to find out about it?
Um, well, uh, when I was doing the odd post, mainly on Instagram about nutrition, um, I was aware, like the climbing community is fairly environmentally conscious, I would say, and there's a big cohort of vegetarians and vegans in the climbing community, and or people who are leaning in that direction. So that covers quite a big chunk of the climbing community. Um, and I was aware in some of the things that I was posting that a lot of my audience had, it seemed like they'd never come across someone saying red meat is healthy. Like they'd never actually seen someone say that. And it was just like, what? Like they were just like couldn't understand it. And they were like, but you have a physiology degree. You studied physiology and nutrition formally. At that point, I actually had my nutrition master's. So I was a, qualified nutritionist, and yet you're saying red meat is healthy. They've heard the exact opposite for years, but then they've had the places they hang out on social media, they've heard it actually more and more in recent years. Like, this is going back a few years now where there was a kind of a bit of a crest of a wave of like uh vegetarian and vegan social media, and some of the channels were quite big. So the idea that red meat was unhealthy was really kind of quite big. So that was really interesting to me. Um, the other aspect was that when I was studying my master's degree, so I did that degree primarily because I just wanted to see how mainstream professional nutrition deals with the same evidence that I'm looking at. What do they think about the evidence on saturated fat, on red meat and cancer, on nutritional epidemiology, and all of these aspects? How do they look at the research? What do they think people should eat? What do they think about should be done about the obesity crisis, which is, consuming so much of our resources. It's going to break all of our healthcare systems. What do they think about it? And, it was fascinating listening to them. They're brilliant people, and they really want to see uh, public health improved. uh, but I got the sense that as some in nutritionists and academics in nutrition are a little bit demoralized. I remember one of my professors talking about um, trying to influence diet in the west of Scotland, where I grew up, which has one of the poorest, like, stats for health outcomes in general, mortality, heart disease, all these things, diabetes, in Europe. And I remember her, she's a French woman, and she was saying the resistance is strong. And she was meaning the resistance is strong to eating healthily. And again, yeah, I was thinking, why is this? And what can we do about it? And I could see that what was implicit in her comment was that there's nothing can be done. We can't really fix this. So I feel like nutrition policy that was being recommended by academics to government that then sets policy is based on like we'll tinker at the edges to try and make the processed food environment slightly less bad. We'll just try and stem the tide a little bit. And I just thought, is that all we can do? Is there another way? Maybe not for everyone, but maybe a subset of people who could take a different approach. So you've got like some people who think, yeah, just only real food, never touch any junk food at all. Um, and that's fine. If people can do that, then great. That's going to work out very well. Um, and you've got some people who think, well, try and eat, try and eat brown rice and like cereal with fiber in it. And like I remember my one of my other professors saying like she added bran to her ice cream.
Oh, wow.
And I was just
Gross.
like, really? I actually felt weird because I was sort of asking her like, what was she actually joking? Because it just seemed bizarre to me that to do that. Like, if you're going to eat pizza and ice cream, just eat pizza and ice cream.
Right.
Um, so that seemed kind of odd to me. So through my experience of doing ketogenic diets and then experimenting a little bit with the carnivore diet myself at various times, um, and also talking to a couple of friends. In fact, a friend from Glasgow had already done this McDonald's patties diet, and I thought like I'm going to do that as well. But it will be an interesting experiment for for people. It had to be the epitome of junk food. It had to be McDonald's because people would be like, but those burgers are terrible. They're terrible. Like, how can you eat them? You must be unhealthy if you eat those. So that was contained in that neat experiment of making it only burgers from McDonald's. It forces you to think, no, if you just look at the ingredients, you can see they're just beef. If you just pay a little bit of attention, there is a way to eat in the processed food environment that we live in, but thread that needle and actually be healthy. And I knew what was going to happen. I knew that I would, have good blood numbers and I would perform well and I would feel absolutely fine. But I could see that a lot of my audience, that was going to be a big surprise to them. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. That's the same pushback I get from people when I tell them, like, when I'm in a pinch, I don't do this all the time. It's maybe like once or twice a year if I'm traveling or something. I'll tell my people, like, if you're in a pinch and you want a good meal, just go to McDonald's. You can order the burger patties. I'll even tell them how to do it. And I get the same response that you just described. Like, the first thing that everybody says is McDonald's is terrible. How can you eat that stuff? You're going to die. And explaining to them, like, they had that scandal, a decade ago where there was some stuff that may or may not have been in the meat or whatever. They can't stand another scandal like that. They have to do 100% beef and cook them up. And the patties themselves are quite delicious. It is beef and maybe just a little bit of salt and pepper, but I think they're really good. And yeah, if more people knew that that could be a viable option when it's something like, at least in our country, it's upper 90% of people live within like 5 miles of McDonald's, like they're everywhere. That would be a
Yeah.
nice option or nice thing for people to know when we're all squabbling about, grass fed, grass finished. And sure, like if you've got the means and you want to do that, great. But I think what your experiment tried to do also is say that this is food that is accessible, affordable to everybody, and regardless of whether you think it's the best quality or not, it is a viable option.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it was viable. It was it was a strange experience in a way because to eat all of my food in the car for 2 months. So it was a little bit solitary in that way. But it was totally fine. And like all of the other carnivore periods of carnivore dieting I've done before, I just felt better and better as the time went on. And I did actually start off thinking I would do it for a month or 6 weeks, and then partly because a blood test at the end got delayed, I decided to just carry on for a bit longer. But I could easily have just continued with that indefinitely. And actually since then, like when I'm traveling, like when I was road tripping to Norway there, I was stopping to charge the car and just did the same thing, just ate some patties, and it was very straightforward.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So the original experiment, again, you decided to try for 30 days. That ended up getting extended. And just to review, this was only the patties themselves from McDonald's all day. So nothing else, no eggs, no other sources of
I
burgers
did
or
eat some
anything else.
eggs. I
You
did
did have
actually eat some
eggs.
eggs. So not very much though. So only on a handful of days where I was going climbing, but I was going to be out all day for a big day climbing, and I had to have an early start. So I did actually have some eggs because that's all they serve in the morning. So I did that a handful of times, but I think like more than 90%, maybe even more than 95% of the calories were just from pure beef, and yeah, nothing else. And the
Gotcha.
only thing I drank was tea. I do have some milk in my tea, so it wasn't zero carb either, but yeah, it's like nominal amounts of carbs.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
so that was the sum total of what I ate. And I I lost. So my running diet was a mixed diet with some
Gonna
carbs.
ask. Okay.
Yeah. And I usually do gain a little bit of weight. Like I usually set up about 68, 69 kilos. And so I dropped like 3.5 kilos over the course of the 2 months. Or actually, I dropped 3.5 kilos in the first month and then maintained it for the
I
second
see.
month. Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
And then my blood panel was it was well, it's the best blood panel I've had, really.
It's crazy.
So yeah, just like as you would expect, like low blood sugar, uh, triglycerides went down, HDL went up, LDL stayed the same. It didn't rise. I don't actually think I'm lean enough to have the large rises of LDL, or maybe I wouldn't anyway. That's actually something I would love to do at some point. Is 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 actually calorie restrict on a carnivore diet to get myself like bodybuilder lean and see if I do get that lean mass hyperresponder effect where my LDL starts to skyrocket. That would be interesting to see. Because I'm fairly lean. And I don't get that effect at all. My LDL just sits between like 110, 120 on any type of ketogenic diet, and no matter what the change in my weight is within that range that I do change. But
Interesting.
like my CRP was really low, liver enzymes were just fine. Everything else was just normal.